Good morning, everybody. How are we? Before I start, I'll let anyone who's listening to let me know you can hear me and no echoes or anything. Excuse me, I've got a cat on my desk. Hey, Daniel, how you doing, buddy? Spider dog, clean. Everybody else I've seen, Double D's was first today in the chat. No one sound like Kaiser, but hey, go touch grass. How are you? So I'm going to go ahead and share this. This is from the Australian Army Research Center. It's just a little short thing on the ancients and dealing with PTSD. Hey, Wyatt. Hey, Nomad. So I like this unknown quote here. My past is an armor I cannot take off. No matter how many times you tell me the war is over. So, I mean, it's just a good little reminder that we can press down the feelings associated with post-traumatic stress. It's still always there. Something interested me. I was reading in Exodus when God was giving the law to Moses, and one of the laws we follow, and that's one I've never really known or thought about, but he told Moses to if a soldier seems battle weary, send them home to essentially recuperate, and so he doesn't bring that back to the front. Was pretty pretty impactful when I read that. This was yesterday, when all the nuttiness was going on over on other channels. So, yes, indeed, Wyatt. If you haven't voted, go vote. Listen to this later. I pray you're still on the voter rolls, as my daughter had a problem this morning. So thank you, Double D's. Click like, thumbs up, thumbs down, make comments, whatever you can do. So please, as we go along, let's talk about this. Ask questions, and let me know what you're thinking. So can everybody see that okay? Just give me a thumbs up, especially those my age. Okay. Thank you, Daniel. So post-traumatic stress disorder, again, we're repeating a lot of the same things, but it helps us remember and think about them. So it's often thought to have arisen with the advent of mechanized warfare. Excuse the weird spelling, it's our down under brothers and sisters. Uh, think shell shock in the First World War, but the examination of ancient texts offers sufficient evidence that PTSD may be as old as the act of war itself. This raises the question of how might have ancient cultures dealt with PTSD in their soldiers, and more importantly, whether any lessons can be drawn from these experiences. Uh, Michael, yeah, she lives in Georgia. So getting back to this, while making an association between Greek hoplite, a Roman legionnaire, and a modern soldier might seem a long bow to draw, the fact remains that we're members of the profession of arms and they were all warriors. It needs to be remembered that despite the passage of several thousand years, the fundamentals of what makes us human have changed little, if at all. This includes being highly reliant on creating filters with which we perceive our surrounding environment. So, the idea of a Spartan with PTSD might stretch the imagination, particularly since the simple fact of reaching adulthood in the ancient world was, in some societies, a better preparation for war than any training an average modern soldier might ethically subjected to prior to battle. Before an ancient soldier ever saw battle, he had outlived 60% of his siblings, witnessed the consequences of swift justice in the form of public executions, and likely had watched ultra-violent entertainment occasioning human deaths. However, the ancient soldier, unlike his modern counterpart, had much on his mind as he went into battle. What would happen if his side lost? A loss might result in the state ceasing to exist, being sentenced to the arena, summary execution, or if he was lucky, simply being sold into slavery. But I'll get into the voting talk after we finish this, y'all. Um, the possibilities must have weighed heavily on the minds of ancient soldiers, and long-term effects on their mental well-being are suggested throughout the ancient texts. Inscriptions originated with the Assyrian dynasty in Mesopotamia between 1300 and 609 BC. Record traumas suffered by soldiers who were called upon to fight every third year during their military service. Herodotus observed Epizelus, an Athenian spear carrier, suffered what appeared to be psychological and, in my opinion, physiological problems following the Marathon Wars in 490. Appian of Alexandria, sometime between 95 and 165, described a legion veteran called Cestius Macedonicus, who, when his town was under threat of capture by Plutarch, oh, I'm sorry, Octavian. set fire to his house and burned himself within it. So he self-immolated. Plutarch's life of Marius speaks of Caius Marius's behavior, who, when he found himself under severe stress to end of his life, towards the end of his life, suffering from night terrors, harassing dreams, excessive drinking, and flashbacks to previous battles. Marius was the one I talked to about before, who they used his PTSD against him in a political campaign. These examples are just a few instances of which seem to demonstrate that PTSD, or culturally similar phenomena, may be as old as warfare itself. And like I said about the Exodus, so we're talking about 5,000 years ago with Moses. So if we are able to accept PTSD is not a product of mechanized warfare. Good morning, Misty. And very likely did occur in ancient soldiers, then the question should be asked, how did ancient cultures deal with individuals who experienced PTSD? While many ancient cultures were able to recognize the significant changes in soldiers following battle, the precise reasons as to what created these changes were elusive. A common explanation was that the occurrence of what I described as PTSD, this is the author of this study. PTSD was caused by the action of malevolent ghosts or spirits of those who were killed in battle and now sought vengeance upon their killer. While it is unlikely that a vengeful spirit explanation is correct, it does contain the insight that the sickness originated from an inward or unseeable wounding. And these invisible wounds could be just as deadly as any outward wound. We see that today with, they had the 22 a day campaign. It looked now, from the most recent research that I've seen from the Special Operations Foundation, that it's close to 40 to 45 a day now. It is a sad, sad state of affairs. That is one that has prompted me to have these discussions and just record the studies and my thoughts on things. My brain can go to those places and think about those we've lost and continue to lose, right? Now, I will say, as in PTSD episode 2, that despite, I just read your message and it gave me pause to think, Spider Dog. Thank you for that. You're correct, and it talks about ghosts of enemies haunting their killers, but what I didn't see, and I may have just forgotten, is the loss of a friend and his ghost haunting that friend, and we now call that survivor's guilt, correct? I mean, that's just my thought. Many ancient cultures sought to deal with and create specific rituals to heal the unseeable and drive off the ghost who caused them. The central purpose of these often culturally unique rituals was to welcome the returning soldier back into society and allow for the release of the trauma. It's like I talked about earlier, right? You had rituals you participated in during uh, post battle activities when at night they wouldn't fight and they would go back to camp and have the rituals of wailing and ritual crying for the loss of their brethren. So the Romans directed the Vestal virgins to bathe returning soldiers, purging them of the corruption of war. Native Americans performed sweat lodge purification rituals in which returning warriors would share their stories and sweat out their perceived inner pollution. I've done this. I did not do it under a new age ritual. I did it on a Navajo reservation in Arizona with a Native American friend of mine who was a member of the reservation. It was definitely a awakening experience. I appreciated it. I appreciated being welcomed in. Um, I do not recommend, I do not recommend doing it with the new age hippie set. They do more dangerous things than I think is good, unless you're doing a sweat lodge like in Arrested Development with the dad there. Oh yeah, Boston. I mean, it uh it did some good for me for a while, and um, it is different things. I like to experiment with treatments. So anyway, let's go get started back here. While a plethora of writings describing PTSD like signs in ancient veterans indicate that these rituals did not always work, given the sheer numbers of ancient soldiers who went into battle and through these rituals, it would seem likely that for some, something about them did work. I completely agree with that, Boston. Spiritual healing sometimes issues that don't present themselves needs cures that you cannot see. 100%, man. However, it might not have been the welcome back into society alone that worked. I do think that society is a fantastic way to um, treat symptoms and help a person along. Since I moved down uh, to Macon, uh, it's a smaller community. I walk around. I talk to the shop owners. I talk to the homeless people. I talk to my neighbors. It has been another way of healing. My job forces me to get out and go to different places and deal with different people. Uh, so it's like getting paid for some sort of therapy, right? 100% Boston community is an important thing. Us hanging out here on on F3 here, other channels, absolutely laughing and getting some kind of catharsis, right? Uh, Completely agree. It's not the community that the Wranglers of the world talk about. It's a it's something that people can come and go from and agree and disagree in, and you know. Um, anyway, I'll leave it at that. I'll leave the fun stuff for our other shows. Uh, what might have been even more important, is what is often overlooked, was the reintegration process would begin in the aftermath of battle. It like I said in PTSD too, right? As soon as possible, even while you're in battle, let's get that reintegration going. I know that armies have a selfish reason for getting the soldier help while they're on the battlefront, right? Let's get them to the front. Let's get more guns online. But it's a start, right? Um, so begin in the aftermath of the battle when the survivors began to walk home. Remember, they were walking home. Given that ancient soldiers sometimes fought far from their homeland, when the war was over, they had to walk home. The speed of this return was dictated by the pace of the slowest animals, and the slow pace, while frustrating, may well have given soldiers much needed time to reflect upon what they had experienced, grieve for comrades lost, and perhaps find solace in and share in group. Dang it. I hate a roller mouse sometimes. In group experience, the long march back culminated in ritual cleansing and a return to home, as mentioned earlier. It's good. My PTSD stems from the same time I was going through my nasty divorce. Being isolated, I wish I had a community like this to come together. Good things here, GT. I appreciate it, Boston. And yes, divorce can be traumatic. I watch a lot of family court cases and stuff like that, and the things people drag people through. It that's less of an intense PTSD and more of a complex PTSD thing, more of a thing you see with kids, right? Kids of abuse. So I have a complex PTSD background as well as my intense PTSD from combat. So it's a persistent thing, right? And I'm sure the divorce was exactly that. What's what? Wyatt Earp Wrangler got to say. As long as you have support from others who understand what you're going through, that's what matters. Absolutely, Michael. And that's why we give you our support, whether it's just talking to you or, uh, sharing your information so you can get the help you need. What's up, Clean? Good to see you back, brother. Let's see. All right, back to this last paragraph on this page. One of the reasons this slow decompression might have aided the efficacy of the return rituals can be seen in its complete opposite in contemporary conflict, where the advent of improved transport has made it possible to move troops quickly and efficiently, perhaps too quickly and too efficiently. While troops might have been happy to be back home far more quickly, there might be a lost opportunity for soldiers to properly process what they have seen and experienced within a like-minded group. So, um, one of the memories that is this is the Wayne Ship is the author from the Australian Army Research Center, by the way. Um, before we hit this last paragraph, so the way the way I was doing was like a troubleshooter. I would go in, um, set up technology things, go out on operations, come back, educate people on on the technology if it worked, or talk to the engineers, tell them how to tweak it to better work for the units I was working with. Um, so I was in combat for months at a time, come back, do meetings. So they would actually fly my family to where I was doing the meetings. But the sheer terror of my child holding onto my leg, screaming that if I don't go back, um, that she'll be good. Um, so I get this rapid transport thing, right? I was back and forth. They would see me for a day or two, which some soldiers will say, "Oh, well, that's great that your family got to see you," but I was never home. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I couldn't hit my mute button fast enough. Um, it traumatized my kids. Um, it's burned in my memory so hard. I have a note. Where is that? Will y'all give me like 1 minute? Okay, sorry about that. Um, so I want you to see. So this is with one of my medals. Um, my daughter wrote me this note. This is my oldest daughter. Probably can't see it too much, but she put this in here when I got it. And it says, Dad, I hate it when you go out of town. I'm afraid you might, MITE, die. I, I love you. Uh, and I did this over and over and over again. So, uh, so I would have rather just been gone, right? Uh, but we talk about it, and it's I'm glad I have a good relationship with my kids. I'm glad it didn't ruin it. Uh, anyway, somebody made me laugh. Okay. Uh, let's do this last paragraph. Although PTSD is no longer considered the actions of vengeful and angry ghosts, its effects would still be recognizable to an ancient physician or shaman. And it is still as damaging to the individual, while no absolute solution can be drawn from the experiences of ancient soldiers. There may be sufficient clues to warrant studying what benefits might be gained from delaying the return for of groups of individuals from conflict in a structured manner, thereby lessening the propensity for PTSD to occur, particularly if it were possible to enact rituals of our own, rituals which recognize and free returning soldiers from their traumas and assuage any sense of guilt and culpability, and reinforce that society values them for what they did. We may be better to deal with PTSD. And that's what I wanted to cover um, on that front. If anybody wants to discuss, ask questions, whatever. What Ray, Michael. I also have a psychiatrist who helps me when I need him. Medication helps me, and I have anxiety issues with borderline depression. What I've dealt with in the last 10 years is haunting. Uh, I'm sure it is. And, I hope you took what the ribbon we gave you in good fun. Um, it was harsh at times, uh, and I get um, that 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 you're going through a lot. So double D's, yeah. Um, but surprisingly, they don't hold it against me. And it's, they're Gen they're Gen Y. No, they're Gen Zers. Uh, and people talk shit about them and but they're strong kids. I was just over there yesterday after I got back from South Carolina before we started watching all the craziness. So, anything anybody want to talk about? You want to talk about nuttiness yesterday, or it's especially well, I guess me and Josh will go over Kaiser's Wyatt rant. Um, from yesterday. Times. Am I missing something? Double D's. Absolutely. Absolutely. We enjoy your takes. Your you're witty. I mean, and before this didn't hit. Now it hits perfect. So uh, I I'm glad you're over here. Oh, just nuttiness with Kaiser and toddler rage quitting stuff, and it it's just pretty funny. But over here's, we have our more serious stuff. So, um, the combat trauma was rough, but that stuff with my kids was extremely rough. Um, I guess they're sawing through some concrete next door. Let's see. White gets that while harsh, we wanted him to be in a better place online. His bigger balls than Twatler. He dished it out, took it, and stood tall. Absolutely. I mean, you you have impressed me, and it's like cult deprogramming almost. So we do it by laughing and cutting up. So, but anyway, what I was saying was the combat stuff was rough, but the stuff with the kids, uh, that time she was holding on to my leg, it was in Tucson, and the whole freaking terminal was bawling. Um, that was a rough day, and I had a 19-hour flight ahead of me to think about that crap. So anyway, I think I'm gonna close this one out. After we address this. I tell you, Double D's, it was killer. But I'm gonna close this one out. Me and Josh will be live at 2, I think. So hope to see everybody over there. If you haven't, hit like, subscribe, leave a comment, uh, suggestions. I'm open to always. Um, Wait a minute. Okay, never mind. Misty, you cannot ever say that. Trauma is different for everyone. Um, just like the trauma my kid went through while I was leaving her, while not physical, while not hateful. Her little heart broke, and it's affected her 23 years later. Uh, with separation anxiety issues and stuff like that. So we all need to own our trauma, never feel like that imposter syndrome. It's a real thing with anxiety too. Um, but don't ever feel that way. Um, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a mixture of physiological things. So uh, one thing can hit us one day and it be traumatic, and hit us another day and it not be traumatic. So please don't ever feel that way. All right. Again, stoner and droner. Unless anybody has any caveats, yeah, that y'all want to jump in with real quick. All right. I don't have an outro yet. I'll have to come up with one. 42 minutes, not bad. Uh, but looking forward to seeing y'all over at Stoner and a Droner. Two live Jews, absolutely. Good seeing y'all. Thank you.